Presearch was founded kind of from an experience that I had going back about 10 years with Google, with my other business, shopcity.com, and just kind of through this experience where Google blocked our sites and we ended up having to participate in an FTC investigation, and ultimately there was actually a Senate hearing. And we just realized how much market power Google had, and so started thinking about ways to kind of level the playing field in the search space, which is just super concentrated. Google has more than 92% market share in general web search. Then they also control the number 2 search engine, which is YouTube. And then they've got all the other kind of, platforms, Gmail and Google Maps and Android and Chrome. And it's like, a pretty concentrated internet because of this. And so came up with the concept for Presearch and a way that you could have kind of like a federated search field that would enable you to direct your query into a whole bunch of different resources. And built a prototype back in like 2013, 2014, and then realized that it was going to be pretty challenging to actually go to market. And so put it on hold, really. And then in 2017, discovered Ethereum and realized that we could create a token that would be used to incentivize people to search through Presearch, so like a search reward, and then that we could close the loop on the token ecosystem and create demand by mandating payment for an advertising platform also in pre-token. And so that was kind of the early genesis. Ultimately, the vision is to build a decentralized search engine that is driven by the community, functions as more of kind of like a utility than a company. Search is super important. It's something that acts as kind of a gateway or an access point to all the world's information. And, it's kind of, we think, a little bit too important to just trust to traditional kind of competitive and business practices where you have this incentive to, promote your own platforms, for instance, like what Google's been accused of doing and has done. And then, to end up in this space where humanity has kind of gone all in on a platform that ultimately may be censoring information or hiding information from people. And we think that, by having a more open and transparent search engine that ultimately has community governance and utilizes blockchain as kind of a way to redistribute value throughout the ecosystem so it doesn't end up all concentrated in the hands of the few at the top, that's a pretty valuable and important mission. And so that's what we're working on.
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff, and I think that the story that started it all is really important for people to understand that there are flaws with the current system that Google uses, and that they can just censor information, and that's not really fair for anybody that's trying to grow their business if they just can get it shut down at the click of a button from some employee at Google. So I think that what you guys are doing is definitely pretty amazing stuff, and I think that a lot of people are going to see the value in that. But there's kind of what I would foresee of being a big struggle, being a competitor to somebody as big as Google. Like, they have pretty much unlimited amounts of money that they can throw at things to kind of try to put you guys down. But what do you see as your competitive edge, or I guess how do you plan on competing against Google, and what is your plan to kind of get people more so on board with your platform versus others, and kind of the whole development around that?
Yeah, so I mean, the search space is massive. Obviously, everybody searches. It's one of the most common activities on the web. The web now has billions and billions of users versus, when Google first started and there were, 100 million or a couple 100 million. And so ultimately, really, for the project to be a success, we need just a very small fraction of that overall market. So it's not like we need to take down Google per se. It is more that we need to provide a valuable alternative to the people who are looking four different ways to search the web, and really different search engines that are maybe more aligned with their values. And so the timing is pretty good, and we're pretty fortunate. There's been maybe some missteps, or just a little bit of being out of touch on Google's part. But really, I think it's more, they're so big now, and they have so many just kind of interests that are really entrenched within the organization and within the culture that run contrary to a pretty significant demographic of people who are looking to have open access to information, and to be able to search a web and know that they're not supporting somebody who's or a company that's kind of running counter to their beliefs and their values. And so I mean, Google started off as a fairly libertarian type organization, and the founders were kind of oriented that way. But ultimately, the structure of Google, they took venture capital. Some of that money actually came from some alphabet agencies that certainly have an agenda that's maybe a little bit different than people who are focused on privacy, people that are focused on freedom and liberty. And so we're largely catering to that demographic of people who are looking for an alternative. They want to be able to search with a platform that they know isn't selling them out, basically, whether it's in the form of tracking and profiling, and using that information either to optimize advertising or to build bigger profiles that are being used by other whether they're global or national governmental agencies. And so for us, we're kind of targeting that crypto demographic, which is pretty significant now, more than 100 million people. And then we're focusing on those who are aware and concerned with privacy, and then those that just in general kind of value freedom and liberty, and that might be more along kind of the libertarian spectrum, and don't feel that big tech should be promoting different agendas, and kind of having a voice and an opinion, and are looking for something that's just more of a neutral platform. And so that's a lot of how we're competing from kind of a overall mission and vision, and kind of fit with the audience standpoint. But then obviously we can differentiate ourselves on the technology front as well. So targeting people who are power users and people that are really interested in customizing their web experience, just providing them with additional tools and ways that they can do that. So with Presearch, you can create an account and you can customize all the different providers that you can access through it. You can change kind of the interface. And ultimately, we see providing the community with even greater options for choice and customization. But then there's also people that are interested in earning opportunities and ways that they can be compensated really for their support and their data and their usage. And so we have the search rewards that are pretty attractive to people. And then beyond that, because this is a decentralized project, Web3, and we're leveraging the infrastructure from community members rather than building these massive centralized data centers. We provide people with node software that they can install on their computer or on a virtual private server, and then be rewarded for providing those computing resources that the project needs as well. And that's really kind of what mainnet is all about. So I think there's kind of a whole bunch of different ways that we appeal to people, and really having that kind of segment of the audience as our primary focus. And then ultimately over time, it is kind of an interesting just point in history. I think over the past couple of years in particular, a lot of people have started kind of feeling like Google was not aligned with them, and have started looking at alternatives. And so, it's a great time for us to be able to step in with a solution that isn't Silicon Valley. It's not big tech, and it's something that is more, they feel aligned with their values, and something that they can be a part of more actively, whether it's, just using or promoting or even, building. And many of our team members, pretty much all of them, they start off as community members in like our Telegram or Discord channel, and they become active, and then we end up kind of elevating them within the organization. So it is really a kind of grassroots, ground up movement rather than a top down business.
Gotcha. I think that's definitely a cool and unique approach that not a lot of other competitors take. And actually, speaking of competition, are there other different projects that are doing something similar to you? Like I know there's Brave browser, and I honestly don't know too much about them, but do you see like this being a competitive space in the next 2-3 years that could be potentially disc what's the word I'm looking for? Potentially difficult for you guys to get past that competition barrier, or do you think you have enough to differentiate yourself and Presearch from all the other people that are in the same space?
Yeah, so I mean, there's always going to be competition, and of course, more is going to spring up. There are certainly no shortage of alternative search engines, and yeah, Brave acquired a search engine that they've kind of built into their model within the past year. But ultimately, they're essentially trying to kind of, in our eyes, be Google 2.0. It's a very kind of centralized organization, and started off along the same lines. It has a token, but they also raised VC money, and they're based in Silicon Valley. They're very much kind of a private Google competitor, whereas we see ourselves being more open and more kind of community oriented than just technology focused. And so I think they're out there. There are others that have started and come and gone. There's been 3 or 4 that have come into crypto and had a token and talked about decentralized search, and largely they've ended up going away. It's not a trivial problem. It's a fairly significant problem, really. I mean, search is it's massively valuable, but it's also there's a lot of technical challenges, and then you're kind of ultimately trying to build like a two-sided marketplace, because it's not just about building a search engine, it's about building an ad platform and building that user base of advertisers, and having a self-serve system that enables kind of product market fit. And so it's there's a lot to it. We've been at it for 4.5, 5 years. Team has been growing and evolving. We've got a great CTO, Trey Granger. He was SVP of engineering for a company called LucidWorks, which is like the largest open source search company in the world. They basically build out search experiences for brands and communities. So they power Reddit, for instance, and Walmart and Home Depot, and a whole bunch of others. And Trey has been an incredible asset. And so you kind of do really have to have, I would say, the appetite and the vision for taking on a really significant problem. And a lot of people, they kind of like might get into the space and then realize, oh wow, it's a little bit daunting. So like there's been enough that have come and gone. And then, largely the others that are alternative search engines, there's like Startpage, and obviously DuckDuckGo is kind of the biggest private search engine, and they've gained a pretty significant amount of market share over the past 4 or 5 years in particular, really kind of the post-Trump era, I guess. They've picked up a significant demographic of people that just really don't want to utilize Google. And although that, is competition for us, what we actually view that as is it's segmenting the market, and it's easier for us to now go after DuckDuckGo users, for instance, than try to isolate the privacy focused or alternative browser and search engine kind of community within the Google ecosystem. And so there's lots to do, lots of market opportunity between all of us. I mean, even including DuckDuckGo. I mean, I think DuckDuckGo only has 1 to 1.5% market share. So, and they're doing over 100 million searches a day, which is pretty massive. And so to think that we can't carve out another 1.5% out of the overall space, I think there's definitely ways that it could be done, not underestimating the challenge of it. But we're off to a pretty good start. We're up to about 5 million searches a day right now, and we've really, as far as we're concerned, have not really been focused on full consumer marketing at this point. We've been trying to get all the different elements of the project aligned, whether it's the search platform, the advertising platform, a go-to-market strategy, and we've kind of like scratched the surface on all of those, maybe a little bit deeper than that as far as the actual search experience, and now with mainnet, the infrastructure side of things. But still so much opportunity and upside as far as the advertising platform goes. And then go to market that's really kind of the fun part that I have always kind of been focused on, and that to me is the real opportunity here. But in order to have that go to market opportunity, we've needed to build the technology and build the search engine and do all the other stuff to support the token ecosystem first. And so I feel like really mainnet and kind of post mainnet is our first actual time where all those different things are aligned, and we're ready to really ramp things up.
That's all really stuff. I think everything's just super well said. You have a really good understanding of where you fit in this ecosystem and just how you're going to pull people into your vision and your product. So as the developer, I'm really curious about how this all behind the scenes with the nodes, and I did a little bit of research myself, just looking into your project, but I'd love for you to share about that, how somebody can get started, and then also how the nodes actually work to power the searches.
Sure, awesome. And yeah, I love how you threw that in there, that you did some pre-search, and just from like a marketing and branding standpoint, I do think that is kind of an important and often overlooked thing. I mean, so Brave's search engine is Brave Search, and there are others that have come along, but there isn't really that ability to turn it into a verb. And Google obviously has done an incredible job in that respect, and people now just refer to it as Googling it. And so if we need, if we're going to dent their market share at all, we need people to be able to pre-search it, and they can with this brand. And I think that's actually kind of an often overlooked aspect of the project that does resonate with people. And so yeah, love that you pulled that in. So as far as how nodes work, so what we have right now is kind of like the first iteration of the node software and platform. And so when you are providing a search experience, what you really need to be able to solve for, like the most challenging part of search, is called the long tail. And so you've got basically two types of queries: head queries and tail queries. And so the head ones are the ones that are really common. Maybe it's your top 100,000 to 2 million searches, and a lot of them are done so frequently that it's not super challenging to build out an index and to be able to answer those head queries. You can do that by scraping other services, and there's kind of quite a few ways to tackle that problem. The real challenging problem are the long tail queries, and those are the ones that are longer as far as the number of terms often. They're done infrequently. So, you some of them, it might be the first time they've ever been run. I've seen stats that, something like 5% of all Google searches done every day have never been done before. So there's like a huge way that people can structure language, and ultimately, you need to be able to solve not just short tail but long tail queries, and that's like super super challenging. Bing and Google, and to some degree Yandex, which is a Russian search engine, are really like the only ones that have been able to solve, to a usable degree, and to basically Google or Google-ish quality long tail queries. And Bing spent like billions of dollars doing it. And Yandex has been around for more than a decade, and they've spent, probably hundreds of millions, if not billions, building theirs. And I believe, probably bootstrapped theirs using Google's. So that is kind of the challenging thing, and it's something where if you have good head queries but poor tail queries, it kind of doesn't matter if you have good head queries, because if people start searching for just the things that they encounter every day, problems that they have, or kind of more in-depth research, and you're not providing results, then they lose faith in the ability for their questions to be answered, and so they won't use you anymore. And so we kind of came at it knowing that, both from Trey, who came on right in the early days and was a project advisor, and then we brought on another guy who's no longer with us as an official advisor, but he's a supporter, a guy named Rich Skrenta, and he had raised like 70 million to build out a search engine back 2010 era, and his advice was, oh man, the long tail, it's crushingly hard. And so we basically started from the perspective that the easiest part to decentralize over time is going to be the short tail index, and that's the thing that you can cache it, and you can have it be really quick, and just there's only so many things ultimately that you need to kind of have well indexed, and some of them are more time sensitive, and those are the things that are more challenging. So whether it's building in Twitter results or news results, those kinds of things, where something might have just happened and you need to have that built into your index. But there's lots of ways to kind of solve that, especially in a world that's 20 years from the genesis of Google, where there's a lot more API access, and there are just different information resources that didn't exist back when Google started, and they needed to kind of really figure out how to bring structure to this whole mass of unstructured information. And so our initial focus has basically been, okay, let's build out the node infrastructure, which is basically just a piece of software that you can install on a computer or a server. It has the ability to auto update so it can stay current. It has the ability to connect into our network and basically make itself available for tasks to be thrown at it, and then it can essentially be rewarded in like a micro payment in the form of a token when it does successfully complete a task. And then we need kind of at our end with something that we call a node gateway, the ability to basically build out these pools of resources and efficiently and effectively allocate them to where they're needed, and to basically have like these health checks where it's something where we can tell, is the node actually available? Is it performing well? How do we prioritize it? And what are kind of the thresholds at which it may be more overloaded and then less responsive? And so that's kind of at the heart of it, the first layer of infrastructure. And so the current nodes, what they're doing when you run a query, the query kind of comes into our web server and then ultimately goes to our node gateways. which anonymize the queries. So they it's private search engine. So they take away all the identifying information, and then they distribute those queries out to, we currently have about 65,000 user nodes. So it'll send it out to, whatever the selected user nodes are, and usually it'll go to more than one of them, so that we have basically an assurance that there will be, a result returned, and if one fails, that there's kind of a failover, that type of thing. And then what they do is they then go out, and this is kind of the first role for these nodes, and internally we call it federating, and it's basically taking that query, sending it out to a bunch of different legacy search engines, sending it out to databases, APIs. There's a whole bunch of just different resources that can return, rich, relevant information that can add value to a query result. And then after that information's been collected, then there's an algorithm that gets applied to it and kind of sorts the information and then returns that result set back to the node gateway, which then builds the user experience. And so that could include, your regular kind of 10, 20 blue search links. It might have like a right side knowledge panel that's powered by Wikipedia or somewhere else. And then we have what we call community packages, which is like an open source system. You can go onto GitHub and you can participate. And it's basically a way that you can trigger the call of basically a knowledge panel or an information panel that shows up on top of the search results based on whatever the query is. So if it's currently the easiest one to see is if you search on Presearch for Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, and then through a partnership that we did with CoinMarketCap and their API, we're basically building an on-page crypto summary that has a chart and pricing and links out to all the different project resources. And so it does that, and then the searcher views it, and then it at that same time is embedding an ad, and the ad is coming from the platform that we built out that uses keyword staking. And so that's kind of really high level overview, like how it works, what they're doing. But this is kind of like the first phase, and what it ensures is that we have like top tier quality for all types of queries. And then it provides us with that infrastructure layer where we can start adding additional roles into that node software. So it could be, crawling, and we could have, the nodes crawling the web, or after they've crawled the web and they pull information down, then that information needs to be indexed, and then ultimately there needs to be like search indexers, and then there are a whole bunch of different functions as far as relaying information and coordinating information between nodes and resources that are available. And so all of those different things are roles that we can now kind of, we've got a new role, push it out into the node software gets updated, and now we've got 60,000 potential crawlers and 60,000 potential indexers. And so where we're started is about that user experience, and then where we're going is basically decentralization and ensuring that data source ultimately is something that's kind of internal to the platform, and is something that is censorship resistant and is difficult to disrupt. So it's very resilient, and ultimately providing kind of that open data set that the community can really start to play a role in. So whether it's curating information and people are voting with their tokens, upvoting, downvoting, or we might end up having different subject matter experts that can create like an entire data collection and then propose it into the system, and then ultimately, based on usage and voting, the community could choose to include that data set within the overall index. So it's about just trying to ultimately have this ecosystem that is not controlled by one central entity that's making decisions for everybody, that essentially people are able to participate, and they can also, contribute and be kind of integral to the experience, and then have the rewards of that system be distributed out to those who are creating value. So that's kind of the vision and where we're going, and then how we've started with the current nodes.
That's good stuff. I had so many questions come up, but you just answered all of them. Like I was gonna ask how many nodes you have right now, user nodes, and like what are the benefits of decentralization. But everything you talked about covered all my questions. And
Cool.
like I'm pretty confident. Like at least 99.9% of people do not think about how complicated a search engine really is, and like how much has to go into it. So I really appreciate your explanation. Just providing on a very surface level, I'm sure, just how complicated it really is. So yeah, super cool.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, it's kind of like this magic box, right? And when we all use it, and it's become just so integral to all of our lives. And I read a quote one time that the average person says things or asks questions of Google that they wouldn't ask their wives, they wouldn't ask their priest, they wouldn't ask their parents. And there's so much trust that's involved in that, and that's why ultimately we think that this needs to be open sourced, and why it needs to be something that is community derived, so that we know that all that information. And I mean, if you think about the intelligence that Google must have, based on their ability to access the queries for billions of people every single day and analyze those, what that knowledge and how that knowledge could potentially be used in ways that maybe not aligned with everybody's values or interests, whether it's market manipulation or any of the other things that you can imagine. I mean, to us, it's just, yeah, it's a pretty important thing that we certainly respect and ultimately want to kind of educate people on, so that everybody understands and respects it. And that I think is pretty important. But yeah, in the meantime, it's like we've all just kind of grown up with Google, and it just works, and it's kind of like this vanilla search experience where it's kind of the same for everybody. I mean, they do some type of passive personalization on things based on your profile, but to the average person, it looks like everything's always the same, and it's just so simple. And they use their branding, and even the name of it. It just seems so kind of fun, and yet kind of behind the scenes, man, they've made literally like hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue, and tens of billions, if not more, in profit. And they have the ability to really steer what people think, and it's something that we just think, yeah, if we could have a resource that we could all really trust, not just because the branding's good and their PR is good and their lobbying is good, but because smart people who are actually developers can kind of jump into the ecosystem and say, oh yeah, this is how it works. Oh, it's not doing this for sure. It is doing this for sure. Oh yeah, there's this influence. You can see it. That's kind of a better way to have that kind of power be wielded.
Yeah, good stuff. And is that going to be pretty transparent? Like, would it be reasonably easy for somebody as a developer to come into the project and look at how the searches are processed, and what the weight is on certain types of results that are returned to users?
So ultimately, yes. Right now, because of the way that things are like largely being sourced from external, indexes, it's not really at that level yet. But the community packages are, they're fully open source, and really the vision for it is to have everything be fully open source. And I mean, Google's argument has always been, I mean, for their degree of secrecy, which is quite significant, is that people will try to game the system, right? And that is definitely a concern. If people are trying to influence search results, and they know how to do it, and they can go in and manipulate things, But that already kind of happens through SEO and through other kind of practices, and it's something that we think ultimately can be combated because if you are exposing different things, like for instance, if somebody is trying to pass authority from one website to a bunch of others, if that can be seen and visualized and ultimately kind of detected by community of people who are engaged and interested, then it could also be flagged. And there are just lots of ways we think as well through kind of using cryptocurrency and tokens and staking to enable people and require people to have skin in the game in order to have different degrees of influence within the platform. And so there's kind of a way for people to gain trust in ways where if they violate that trust, then at least the community ends up benefiting because their stake is given up, or however it's ultimately done. But yeah, that's kind of over the long term, and this is definitely a multi-year project. It's going to take some time to get to that level, but that's really and to have a really in-depth conversation with Trey is always really inspiring, because he has a really great vision for technically how to bring all this together, and he's been thinking about this for a long time, and has written books on open source search, and just has a really I think great perspective on the opportunity and the platform and how it can all be tied together in a way that doesn't lend itself to being gamed and does provide that level of transparency.
Nice, well said. And I'm just curious, one last question for you, and then I'll hand it back over to Zach if he has any more questions. Do you have like a goal for the amount of decentralization that you're trying to achieve? Like, I guess one metric would maybe be like the number of user nodes per people who use the search feature on a regular basis. Like, you'd want to have like 10 user nodes per 100 searches an hour or something like that. Do you have any kind of metric like that?
I would say we don't have a metric per se, but yeah, certainly. I mean, like ultimately, uh, all of the different stacks within the system need to be decentralized so that they can be operated by users. Ultimately, we want kind of the central project or the core development team to be very small and have very little ultimate control over the network, and enable kind of this distributed uh, uh, you know governance of the platform as well. We're thinking about different ways that we could design it and enable it to be forked so that it's not just a single instance and a single set of defaults and a single kind of even domain. If there could be ways that it could be set up so that it's kind of mirrored, and ultimately that there's some type of gateway that enables you to access these different kind of more localized or distributed kind of pools, but that you could also access those directly without going through kind of that gateway. I think that could provide people with a really kind of robust and decentralized approach. But yeah, there's a lot to be discovered. I mean, certainly we don't have all the answers. It is something that is evolving, and the amazing thing about it has just been the level of support from the community and the number of smart people that come in as token holders or end up contributing as developers, who are thinking about things differently and bringing new suggestions into the project all the time, and ultimately what we don't want is something like Google or like Facebook, where it's like you've got kind of this benevolent dictator who is making all the decisions, and ultimately there's it isn't really beholden to the community, and the community really has no recourse. I mean, even right now, if we all disagree with Mark Zuckerberg, well, what are you going to do about it? The network effects are so massive ultimately, it would take the most massive movement of unity amongst users in order to really influence anything. We think it should really be more kind of the other way around. So that really requires maximum decentralization. My kind of background before Presearch was really more coming at decentralization from the perspective of local, and so Shop City is all about building empowered local communities, and so I think that that's kind of an interesting facet to overall global search, as well as just economics and politics and everything else, and just trying to have as much power be at the edges as possible and as little in the middle as possible. And so thinking about how that applies to this project, is kind of similar.
Nice. Really appreciate your answers, man.
Yeah, man.
Back if you have anything else, or maybe could go to community questions too.
Yeah, if anybody from the community wants to use the AMA questions channel to ask a question, you can go right ahead. I do have a couple questions though. I mean, you guys have so much going on, and from somebody that doesn't really understand the development side of things nearly as much as somebody like Cole does, like it definitely, I can see how how much this is just involved and how much work it could take. And I obviously never thought that running a search engine would be easy, but like just hearing you talk about all the intricacies and all the details of everything that needs to be well thought out is just mind blowing for somebody that, like I said, doesn't have any developmental background. So with that though, there's a lot of people that would probably need to be on board too. So could you go in a little bit about the team and kind of what's the team's background and the size of the team and all the people kind of involved there?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, it is actually a fairly small core team. Trey is really the one leading the development side of things, and he certainly has a really in-depth understanding of things. He's such an interesting CTO as well, in that he's not just a theory guy, and he's not just somebody who comes in with ideas and needs others to implement them. I mean, he basically is a full stack developer himself, although that's really not what he's doing. He can do that, and as he's been playing different roles in the project, he wasn't the starting CTO. We've just in 2020 we kind of had an opportunity due to COVID to bring him in. He was like a very early advisor. I first put out the white paper in June of 2017, and like immediately Trey messaged me and was like, "Oh, this is awesome, man. I've had a similar vision and I'm super pumped about this direction, and I like the name, and I want to buy some tokens, and I'm interested in joining as an advisor, and here are some things maybe that you're missing, and here's kind of some next level vision to what you've put out there." But he as SVP of engineering for this other large San Francisco based company. I mean, his financial kind of requirements exceeded the ability for the project, and then COVID happened, and that company ended up doing some restructuring, and he at that time had been put into a higher level role than SVP of engineering. He was the chief algorithms officer, and it kind of I think took him out of the development side a little bit, and put him more into, he was kind of like a voice for the company, and he was doing speaking and conferences and books, and he really wanted to be more involved kind of in the actual action, and be building things, and so they ended up doing a bit of a restructuring, and he had an opportunity to step out and kind of jump into Presearch. So he joined us as CTO in June of 2020. So it's coming up to about 2 years. And ever since he joined, I mean, honestly, the project just took off at a whole other level. And then really since then, yeah, I mean, the other kind of core developers, we're actually largely using an outsourced dev shop. So we've got, a couple of kind of internal. I mean, we really didn't want to ever have actual employees, and so everybody's a contractor. But we've got some that contract directly with Presearch, and then we've been using this dev shop that we got introduced to. I guess it was probably late 2019, and we ended up starting working with them. I guess it would have been probably late 2020, and they've just been amazing. Honestly, they have the ability for us to spin up new developers as needed. They're basically like everybody within this organization, and I think they've got something, maybe 35 or 40 full-time, full-stack web developers, all like really high-end, very smart with different focuses and specialties, but the ability to be full-stack developers. And so as we need more, we're basically just able to add more resources as needed, whether it's a short-term project or more of an ongoing basis. We've got a number of developers through them that work on Presearch just 100% of their time. Others that just kind of pop in here or there as needed. We've got a guy, Julian, who's an expert in crawling, and he's working on the Presearch crawler, which will be the next role that goes out to the nodes. And he was involved in the Common Crawl project, which is basically a full and open sourced web scale index that is provided for different search engines to use, which is definitely something we're going to be leveraging ourselves. But Julian is working on the actual decentralized Presearch crawler. We've got a VP of data scientist that's going to be joining us a little bit later, a couple of months out from now, and really helping build out kind of the next layer of the decentralized index. And then aside from that, we've got kind of marketing and community and kind of community support people. We're totally decentralized as far as I'm in Canada, but everybody else is all over the place, in the US or in Europe. And we've kind of got basically just a remote team. Alex, who's on the call now, who's our head of growth. As I was saying at the start, he's also from Minnesota, where you guys are, but he's out in the Bay Area now. And we actually just met him for the first time. He'd been involved in our community for many years, and leading growth for over a year. And finally, due to COVID and everything, we just met with him a couple of weeks ago down in Austin. We've got a Presearch RV that we've had since 2017 on the road, going to all these different conferences and events. It's got these big Bitcoin logos on the side of it, and it was kind of stuck down in Texas pre-COVID. And so finally went down and picked it up, and then got to meet with Alex for the first time. But many of the team members we've never met. Trey, I've met a number of times, and we've been to some conferences together. But overall, because of the way that we kind of promote people from within the community, it's basically we get the people that are already like the biggest advocates. They kind of just like surface within the project. It's like, man, how could we not hire this person? They're amazing. They already are huge believers. They're already creating value. It kind of like takes away a lot of your kind of risk, and ensures that there's alignment within the team. And so we've been able to do a lot actually with relatively few people. Just based on having that kind of common vision and that excitement and that efficiency as far as what we can crank out, and just having a pretty clear vision. I think originally with the white paper, it was kind of planting a stake in the ground as far as like why we need a decentralized search engine, and then Trey really has first as an advisor and then as CTO, really kind of brought clarity to, okay, here's exactly how we're doing it. Here are all the different phases. Here's what needs to happen next, and enabling the team to build out as needed the infrastructure that we need and the different tool sets that we need. But ultimately, that is kind of how we feel like we can tackle this challenge. Google has thousands of search engineers. which we would never have as a core team. But if we can build this to be more of like a coordination market where it's not just about hey, we built this. It's hey, how do we build these incentive models? How do we build these APIs? How do we build these other ways that people can plug their work into this, where ultimately there could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of people that are contributing to Presearch and getting their own, type of value back from their work. And collectively, we could certainly, I think, have more engineering and more inputs to the system than a centralized entity like Google.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool way to go about building a team. Having those people in the community that really, like you said, just kind of just surface up in the project that are already aligned with the values. I think that is really really aligns with the goals of kind of being that decentralized network, not having a team that controls everything, but actually including the community, that the people that are already contributing and adding value and showing their passion. I think that's a really cool approach. So the last question I had was, obviously being a search engine, I don't think that your search engine in particular would have like run into this, but just like search engine in general, a lot of people are utilizing them and they could potentially influence a lot of people in certain areas of things. And oftentimes, things that pull a lot of influence are regulated in some way. Are search engines similar to that, or are there like strict regulations on them in different countries, or kind of how does that work, or if there's any regulations at all?
So generally, there's no regulation, believe it or not, and I would say actually kind of the lack of accountability that's been required of Google, or even though they've got billions and billions of users and hundreds of billions in economic resources and a global footprint. There really isn't any type of governing body there, and again, part of it does go to the fact that they are global in nature, and so you've generally got just kind of a more difficult to regulate type environment. But where it has happened in kind of more specific instances, it's largely been in the EU and more on the competitive landscape than content, which a lot of these platforms have gotten by some of the different laws and some of the different liability concerns that let's say traditional media, your print or TV, any of these other ones have, because they can say, oh well, we're just a platform. We're enabling others to have their own kind of voice on things, and this information is coming from the web, and we're just kind of making sense of it. We're not actually publishing the information, that kind of thing. And so it's largely bypassed the regulators, although there have been, like I said, we initially were able to resolve our issue with Google because there was this FTC investigation into Google, and it was looking at them from an anti-competitive standpoint and them preferencing their own products and that kind of thing. But ultimately nothing actually came of it. There was really no real order. There was no real regulation. You've had these few kind of stand up and dog and pony show in front of Congress events with Zuckerberg and some of the other big tech CEOs, but ultimately really nothing comes of it. And they're spending tens of millions on lobbyists, and so there's kind of that aspect of things. Maybe that's why, but just largely regulation has not happened, and there is no regulation outside of in the EU, more from an anti-competitive standpoint, and we were actually able to benefit from it. But the EU forced Google through Android and Chrome to implement something called the search choice screen. So it previous to this, you install Android, which is like, like massive. I don't know what they have in Europe. It's something crazy though. It's like 80% market share. Um, and then, pretty much everybody running, Android is running Chrome. So call it 98 or 99% are running Chrome. Well, then by default, everybody would get Google as the search engine. And that was kind of like the backdoor way that Google was essentially through mobile ensuring their dominance. And so the EU ended up implementing this search choice screen. So starting year before last, rather than everybody gets Google by default, now when you install Chrome or you have a fresh install or a reinstall of Android, it now provides you with the opportunity to choose your search engine. And so there's like, 10 or 12 search options that are listed, and it goes by country. And, you kind of have to have like the ability to serve that country in order to be considered to be included in this list. Alex saw that this was an opportunity and he got us included so that Presearch is actually one of the default search engine options within Android for all European users. And there's, 500 million people and 80% of them are running Android. And so it's a really big market opportunity, and it's led to really significant growth for the project in the EU. But really, outside of that, yeah, it's unregulated. That may change in the future, but nothing really tabled at this point that looks like any type of regulation. And it's largely just self-regulation and kind of regulation by bad press. Nobody wants to get bad press, so that's generally the mechanism to keep people in line.
Wow, that is actually pretty surprising. I really would have thought that there would have been at least something in place for at least outside of the EU, but wow, that's shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, it is for sure. I mean, ultimately, the users are to some degree kind of holding you accountable just based on your relevance, and then kind of tagged into that is advertisers and relevance. But yeah, it's kind of like crypto, a bit of a wild west still, believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, I think that answers all my questions. You did a phenomenal job answering everything. I think you've definitely had some practice with this, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's become a passion, man, and yeah, just after this experience, honestly, it just made me really realize the importance of it, and like we need to figure it out as a community and come up with something that is different. It's just there's a lot of power put in the hands of very few people, and that generally doesn't go well for the general populace. And so yeah, I don't know. It's kind of imperative that we get some type of alternative, and we kind of planted the flag and ran with it, and we've been getting tons of community support, and not really that many others who have put up their hand to do it. So we just keep improving as we can, and ultimately, yeah, it's going to be a great day when this can be turned over to full community governance, and when things are kind of running, like Bitcoin for search. That's kind of the ultimate vision.
Yeah, I definitely like it. Looks like we got a couple questions from the audience, actually. OXG asks, would there be by a form of a partnership with, I guess, other groups? I guess the question seems to be pretty vague. I don't know if he wants to elaborate before going on.
Yeah, I mean, if just to answer generally, yeah, definitely. There's there's a referral program, there's an affiliate program that everybody gets access to when you join, and that's how that's really how the network so far has grown. It's been like totally organic. There really hasn't been like ad spend or paid influencers or stuff like that. It's largely people utilize the referral program, and they collect pre-tokens when the people they refer end up using Presearch. And so kind of on that level, it's a pretty, open playing field. And then, we're always looking at different blockchains and different crypto projects that add value. Our ultimate vision is not to, kind of replicate Google and build everything ourselves. So we're trying to find other projects that could ultimately help kind of round out that ecosystem. I mean, Google is very sticky because they've got an email service, and they've got a federated login, and they've got maps and all these different things that people use. And so if there are other crypto projects that offer competitive solutions to that Google ecosystem that we could ultimately partner with to promote, or find out some way to just make things easy, that's always of interest. And aside from that, there are certain things where a project will come along. Largely, we've been partnering with like decentralized infrastructure providers, people that enable node operators to run nodes on decentralized servers, basically like Flux or Threefold. That's kind of been the current needs of the project. But yeah, always looking for others that have aligned values and can kind of help be the Davids against the Goliath.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. Yeah, well, a couple other questions from Bjorn Ignis. He asks, or his first question is, will you create apps like Brave or have partnerships with other decentralized applications?
Yeah, so that is really, the browser and search space is one that, there's a lot of integration, and that, is basically why Brave ended up buying this Tailcat search engine that they've integrated into Brave. And so for us, we've kind of done it the other way. Search is kind of the core focus. But in order to enable people to easily search Presearch on a desktop device, laptop, whatever, you can install a browser extension. So we have extensions that support, Chrome, which also supports the Brave browser, Firefox, and that enables you to basically change your default search engine to Presearch, and you can also set Presearch as kind of your home page or your start page. On mobile is a little more challenging. You really generally don't have the ability to use extensions, and so you need the actual browser app. And so we do have on iOS as well as Android a Presearch app for mobile that you can install. It is a private browser. It is very similar to Brave, and you can use it that way. And then any other decentralized projects that have real usage and that have kind of a web-oriented, generally it's not as relevant, with it like DeFi and kind of like more financial apps like, just cryptocurrency stuff. But if there's anything really that's Web3, and some of the crypto wallets do have browsers built into them, and so that's a partnership opportunity as well. But yeah, definitely happy to talk to anybody that you or others might see a fit with, and see if we can put something together.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really awesome. His last question is, why don't you build a multi-chain ecosystem like for Binance Smart Chain or Kronos, etc.?
So that is ultimately kind of the vision for the token. We do see that this is it's a multi-chain world. As part of the mainnet launch, we're preparing to launch Web3 integration. That the token is currently Ethereum based, which works well as far as interoperability goes. It's got tons of support across all different wallets and exchanges and apps, but ultimately you've got costs and you've got sometimes speed, and really to us the multi-chain thing just makes sense from a go-to-market strategy, because all these different blockchains have their own communities, and if we can tie in with those communities and introduce them to Presearch and add value to the tokens that they support, because Pre is available on a different chain, then that makes a ton of sense. And so, now that Web3 integration is coming out, which enables you to have just greater control over the tokens, now it'll enable us to go multi-chain a lot easier. And we do see definitely support for Polygon and Binance Smart Chain, and there are other ones that the community consistently requests, and that's really kind of more what would drive an integration. But yes, certainly see that multi-chain is the way to go.
Yeah, I definitely agree. A lot of people like one network over the other and just refuse to move off of it. So I think going multi-chain definitely exposes you to a much larger audience too. So that's definitely the way to go. Is there any last questions or any last things that we haven't gone over that you'd like to touch up on before we wrap it up?
I don't really have anything. I think you guys, asked some good questions and gave an opportunity to really, dive into some things. Honestly, I mean, I've spoken about many of these things in different places, but actually feel like a lot of stuff kind of came out in this one. So hopefully we can give it some exposure. I'm assuming there's a recording.
Yes.
And we can kind of help get it out there that way. But yeah, aside from that, just anybody who's interested, we're moving on to presearch.com domain tomorrow, I believe. Right now it's presearch.org. You can check out presearch.io for more just kind of general project information. And then Telegram t.me/presearch, or on Discord is discord.presearch.com. But yeah, I would love to have any of the members here as users and community members, and then anything we can do to help you guys promote your community as well. Let us know. It'd be cool to get you guys keyword staking or something, and then if you've got a recording, definitely happy to push it out to everybody and see what we can do to spread the word. You guys are doing some good things.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely follow up with you once we get that video uploaded and talk to you maybe about some keyword stakings. That'd be really awesome to integrate. So thank you so much again for your time. I know your time is very valuable. You're a busy guy, so I appreciate you so much for coming on. It was awesome hearing about you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. Good to meet you too. And same with you, Cole, and everybody who's listening. Great to connect.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening in, and have a wonderful day.